Welcome to Sunday Night Live. Let's get ready to rumble! You know, I think this might be the first Sunday night that wasn't a holiday. It's like it's been one holiday after another. So hopefully we'll get a couple of people that actually tune in during the live. Although we have been, it does seem to be that more people are tuning in. And I would like to let me start off with some thanks. I'd like to thank first and foremost Jennifer Barrisano, my girlfriend, my life partner, for all her assistance behind the scenes, because without her, I wouldn't even get in front of the camera because I wouldn't probably bother to put it together, you know? She reminds me that I need to be on air in 15 minutes, so, you know, thanks to her, thanks to my friends, all my friends who came out. We had a great weekend. We did some dog training, which is like a big milestone for me, because for 6 years, for you, those of you who don't know, I was imprisoned, falsely imprisoned, wrongfully convicted on animal cruelty charges, and then had a 3-year or so, give or take a few months, felony parole period, which amounted to about 6.5 years where I couldn't own a dog. I was released early. I didn't think I would be able to have a dog until the end of September, and I was released on my daughter's birthday. Maybe no coincidence, I don't know. May 8th. And suddenly I was able to have dogs. So now I got a house full already, you know, lo and behold. I'd like to thank my friends who were there. Steve G. We used to call him Chicago Steve because he was originally from Chicago, but now he's from the cornfields in Ohio, for making a 12-hour drive here with his girlfriend Jackie and bringing me a couple dogs that they held for months for me. I really appreciate that. I'd also like to thank my friends Jerry and Shane. I'm going to give a special shout out to Shane's buddy, Leanne, who helped get us into a IPO trial, which some of you might have seen online. If you haven't seen it, I would encourage everybody to witness Dante's IGP, IPO, Schutzen, whatever the hell they want to call it now. One at a local club trial here in Long Island at Donnelly's Schutzen Club. I don't even know the name of the club. But believe it or not, there's racism in dog sports. Ta-da! You know, there is prejudice. It's hard to get Donovan Pincher into a trial. Believe it or not. You got to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, apparently. Which is a whole nother topic. I'm not going to go too far into that. But I just want to thank the people, Jesse Runyon, you know, I don't know. There was other people there. I can't think of everybody right now. But Jerry, for Jerry Dogs, everybody for videotaping, for uploading it to YouTube, for trying to inspire me, for trying to support me. You know, I have made some friends along the road in this game. I'd like to say Free America, which has a double meaning. I mean, is it a free America, or would I like America to be free? That's for you to decide. But I am a big proponent of freedom, because without freedom, you can't do things like engineer a new breed, or own a small business, or climb up the socioeconomic ladder, or speak your mind, you know, on a public forum. And those freedoms are quickly slipping away from us. So we need to remember the people that founded this country and died for these stars and stripes behind me. And if you aren't familiar with the Constitution, pick it up and read it, because you kind of, I think I was shocked to realize the rights I'm supposed to have. With that all being said, I want to go back to the subject that we were talking about last week. Last week, I kind of abruptly ended the segment because I glimpsed up. Well, first off, we were having a technical problem. I didn't know how to block incoming calls, and I had incoming calls coming in and disturbing the show, calling on my phone when I'm trying to talk. But I know how to block that now. So I'm becoming a wiser and more professional broadcaster. See, even an old dog can learn new tricks. So that won't happen anymore. But it kind of spooked me a little bit because as I was speaking, I was trying to come to summation of the story I was telling about my first altercation and this kind of all-out brawl, fist fight I had with this dog, this small Dutch Shepherd that I had bought on my first trip to Holland, Raymond, who was a PH1 dog, and how shocked I was at how devastating of a hand-to-hand fighter the dog was, quite frankly. I was blown away by like this dog's effectiveness, and I remember thinking to myself as I'm getting mauled by the dog that if I live through this, I will never sell this dog. And I didn't. I never sold him. But there was a point to the story, a further point. The real point of the story was that I had discussed in prior episodes, I had discussed these early forms of German Shepherd that I had. And I discussed my experience in the security dog industry, renting guard dogs, sentry dogs. And I also was experiencing this new phenomenon of the modern day sport dog, which is a very offensive, very prey-oriented dog that had to come with a lot of speed, a lot of power, had a sucking deep, hard bite, couldn't be shaken off the bite. You had a lot of difficulty even causing the dog to feel any sense of self-defense while he was on the bite. They tended not to growl on the bite. They just loved biting. But I was also trying to decipher, although this dog was coming, there really wasn't a lot of theory behind what this meant for the future of working dogs. And I described in an earlier segment, I described how I was surprised one day when I brought this dog and kind of mischievously, kind of arrogantly, I allowed the dog to go loose in a bar at a hotel where I was performing a seminar. And I'll never forget when the guy, some drunk at the bar, just like slapped the dog in the mouth and shooed him away, like he sniffed near his butt, and he was like, "Get the hell out of here!" And the dog was kind of like the dog was relatively easy shoot off. He was easily shooed away, and he had a look on his face of like borderline submission. He was impressed by this guy. This guy had a sense of authority over him. Let me say it that way. And I was like, wow, like, what is that? Like, what's going on here? How can a dog that flips decoys upside down, that you can't, unless you really know what you're doing, you couldn't even blow him off a bite with the hot, and at that time, the remote collar was a relatively primitive tool. It was like a skull and crossbones button. It's like you press that button, it was high. It was blah! And you couldn't blow this dog off a bite with that collar cranked up at full blast. The early $1,000 Tritronics collar with the 6 plug in it, you know? The green plug, go, all go, you know? You could probably start a car with that collar. And this was before the concepts of low stim were prevalent in the dog training community, and the remote collar was considered sort of a last resort. A last resort. It was known at that time primarily to the hunting dog community, but it was really brand new to the working dog community, the remote collar. I could talk endlessly just about that subject, but I had a point to where I was going with this. How could a dog that would take all this punishment, that loved to bite, came to the bite 1,000 miles an hour, would flip decoys upside down, you were lucky if you could stand on your feet from an attack from this dog from 10 feet away, be shooed off and dominated by a drunk, a casual drunk, like, get the hell away from me, mutt, like slap the dog in the mouth, and the dog's like okay. And I couldn't understand that. Really, I understood it, I think, on an instinctive level, but I didn't know how to categorize it. I didn't know how to put it into words. So I set out to do that. It started to inspire me. I was like, I had these guard dogs. I had all these multiple breeds, different breeds with different characteristics, and also dogs of the same breed. At that time, also, the German Shepherd was a very variable dog. I had German Shepherds from American AKC breeding. We had German Shepherds from Canadian breeding. We had German Shepherds from English breeding, right? And these dogs all had a very diverse, each type had a kind of a different temperament, a different general structure. The West German working dog, the West German show dog. And this is at a time when the West German working and show dog were just beginning to become a division, because prior to that, prior to the early 70s, the working dog and the show dog were the same dog. They were the same dog. The Bundesliga was often a son of a show champion. This can be easily traced back prior to the early 70s, including the early 70s and earlier than that. So I started to really analyze. I was looking at all these different diverse personalities, all this different diverse temperament in different breeds, different diverse temperament in the German Shepherd in particular, because that was the primary breed that I was interested at the time, is the breed I started fundamentally breeding. And I started to, as a matter of fact, here, I was going to show you guys something real quick. Jennifer dug up an old certificate. I never saved much of this stuff, just to show that I'm not talking out of my hat. Here's a certificate for me obtaining a Schutzhund 3 on a homebred dog. I think the year here is 1979, I think. You can see. That's an early date for Schutzhund USA, 1979, Schutzhund 3. And the dog that I talked about prior to, this dog that got shooed away in the bar that I put an IPO1 on, this was the dog right here. And here's his certificate for Schutzhund 1, Nando, who is a son of that famous dog that I talked earlier about, of Fritz Bieler's dog, Driegen. And that certificate is 1981, okay? So I've been doing this a while. So, you know, and I think back also to this fight. When I'm in this hand-to-hand fight with Raymond, this is kind of weird how weird I am, right? As I'm getting mauled by a dog, as I'm starting to lose consciousness, as I'm starting to hear Beatles music, Strawberry Fields playing in my head, as I'm preparing to go through the pearly gates, I'm also at the same time kind of analyzing what is making this dog tick right here. Like, what? I didn't do anything to him that would make him feel like he needed to defend himself. I certainly wasn't maneuvering or moving in any way which would trigger a prey or a predation or a predatory response on the part of the dog. But what was going on? Because back then, people talked in very simple terms, and I still hear this today: prey and defense, as if these were the only two motives a dog had for fighting or biting, which I strongly disagree with, which is evidenced by my story here. I realized that this dog was attacking me and fighting with me out of an alpha mentality. I told him get in the cage, and he told me, nah, nope. He's like, you get in the cage. So we had to have a discussion about, like, who's going to tell who to get in the cage. This has nothing to do with self-defense. It has nothing to do with prey. This is strictly a rank, dominant, alpha position in the mind of the dog. You have to, with a dog like this, you have to be capable of physically earning the dominant position over the dog. And in nature, the only way two animals establish who's dominant is through a physical struggle, a physical fight in which one animal emerges dominant and more physically powerful than the other animal. And that's it. Or mentally tougher, or some combination of those things. Either one's physically stronger or more mentally determined, but it's like who's willing to go the furthest and who's going to be the boss. That's basically what this is. So I started to analyze and develop a theory now. I started to realize, wait a minute, there is such a thing, obviously, as self-defense. If I pick up a stick and I go to attack a dog, he shows his teeth at me, he fights back. He fights back against that. He counteracts that. That's defending. I'm attacking him, he's defending that attack, right? And there's also, obviously, a prey instinct, because if you even flirt a little toy to a cat, a little tinfoil ball, you roll it on the floor, they pounce on it as if it was a mouse, like they stalk it and grab it, want to possess it, because that's a primitive instinct of any carnivore, of any predatory animal. They see that scurrying movement and they're triggered to attack it, grab it, hold it, pin it down, and ultimately to kill it. So here we have several categories already that begin to emerge, right? We have self-defense, which is protecting yourself from attack. You have social dominance, which is I'm the boss and I'm going to let you know I'm the boss. And you have the predation, you have the prey, right? Which is the hunting and killing, hunting, seizing, killing, and the love of that, the passion for that. And I'll refer back to my very first episode when I talked about Bill Cola. Bill Cola had a kind of primitive outline. He didn't try to get into specifics about what fighting was, but he was very accurate when he said the basic job of the agitator is to instill in the dog this idea that he's both hunting and fighting, mixing hunting and fighting together. So now we take this to the next level, that there are several different components just to the subcategory of fighting. And that could even be argued about that there are subcomponents to the concept of prey also, which we could talk about on a later date. But at this point, we're going to kind of stick to aggression. So we have defense instinct. We have social dominance, rank, alpha, social aggression, whatever you want to call it. But it's like everybody knows what it is, Everybody knows in every social structure, every time, whenever you're a little kid growing up, we all know who the star is, who the boss is, whose approval people are trying to win, whose favor, who's the leader, who's the boss, who's the leader in this situation. And fierce struggles ensue within any social construct, creature that's based on social construct. There are serious battles, fights to establish this hierarchy. I've even witnessed in documentaries about wolves where the most dominant wolf will attack the wolf below him in dominance, and the one below him, because he's intimidated to attack back, he's already learned his lesson, will then take out his frustration on the animal below him, and it'll go all the way down in a chain reaction to the lowest animal. And unfortunately, the most submissive animal will often be jumped on by everybody, because everybody's frustrated with their life and they beat up the lowest punk in the chain. So, to deny that there is more at work here than just simply prey and defense is just simply not to acknowledge natural law. There certainly is a social dominance and alpha element in a serious protection dog. As a matter of fact, some people actually tend to avoid that, and a lot of dogs that have very high instincts and a lack of fear and intimidation and a strong alpha mentality have rebelled against trainers in such a way to intimidate the trainer, and they give up on training the dog. They'll label the dog, this dog is not for sport, or he can't be trained, he can't be trained by somebody that can't be alpha over him. He can't be trained by somebody with adequate skill and mental toughness to equal that of the dog, because you can't fake this to a dog. See, this is the part about this. You can't make believe you're more alpha than the dog, because this is not, you can't read, the dog's not reading a book. He's sensing this on a gut level between you and the dog. And if the dog has this powerful alpha drive in him, and you're not able to convince him that he might be the baddest dude in the world, but you're just one notch better than him, and let's all live in peace. Let's establish this. I'm number one, you're number two, everybody is below that, but I'm above you. If you can't firmly establish that over the type of dog that Raymond is, and there are breeds that are pronounced in this characteristic, namely like the Rottweiler comes to mind. Like the Rottweiler is a breed of dog that was primarily based, almost primarily on social aggression, social dominance. That's why you'll notice certain things you can't do commonly to Rottweilers, like you have trouble clipping their toenails or grabbing them or pushing them off the couch, because they just, that's very personal. There's a personal distance there.
Not as much anymore.
Well, the Rottweiler was originally this, and some people, I think, wrongly believe this is an incorrect temperament for the Rottweiler. But remember that the Rottweiler was originally not a dog bred for IPO, not really a dog bred for police to apprehend and grab a fleeing suspect from hundreds of yards away. He was a dog that was supposed to have a very intimidating demeanor. And in the origin, if you read history about it, people used to tie money bags around the Rottweiler's neck, and he was sort of the dog's like, go ahead, try to take the bag off my neck and see what's going to happen. And he'd let you know. So he gave you a strong warning, and if you came closer or tried to touch him, he'd drag you around like a rag doll, and he'd rip your arm off. That's not an improper temperament for a Rottweiler. That is a correct disposition for a Rottweiler. If a Rottweiler is friendly to strangers that talk nice to him, that is not the correct disposition for a Rottweiler. It's not a friendly dog. It's a standoffish dog that lets you know with a very powerful threat and physical posture and demeanor that if you continue to push closer to me, I'm going to hurt you. That's what he was bred for. That's what he was made to do. And he also is extremely powerful, and in a brief conflict with a human being, an old-fashioned Rottweiler can hurt you really bad, really quick. So it was not to be played with. They were not to be taken lightly, old-fashioned Rottweiler. I've seen many a dog trainer permanently crippled and put out of business by a badass Rottweiler from the 80s and 70s, 80s. I'm not as familiar with the contemporary breeding of the Rottweiler, but from what I see from a distance, it seems that the Rottweiler is more modeled now after the behaviors that was sought after in a German Shepherd, which is more of a police-type mentality and more of an apprehension dog, which is a little safer around strangers, more tolerant and less socially aggressive, socially dominant, less alpha than the old-fashioned Rottweiler. Whether or not that's a good thing or not, I can't say, but I can tell you that was not the original standard for the dog, and it was not the common sought-after disposition of the Rottweiler. So, we talk about these elements, right? Defense instinct, prey or predatory instinct, defense instinct, defending himself. And then there's a last part of aggression that I'd like to talk about that a lot of people don't talk about. And I kind of coined this a little. There were some early trainers that talked about it and had different theories about what active aggression is, this term active aggression. But what I see as active aggression is this state of mind that once the dog gets excited into an aggressive state, that he maintains this excitement. It's not a reactive kind of excitement. You need a trigger like defense instinct or social instinct or social aggression or defense instinct to be the flat, to be kind of like the match that strikes, that causes the fire. But once that spark ignites, the thing that keeps the dog fired up is this active aggression, which is very prone in most terrier breeds. Everybody knows a terrier that once he gets excited, he's like, this continuing to stay excited, to stay aggressive, even though the initial triggering experience has ceased, even though you're not teasing him anymore, is necessary in most dog sports because most dog sports have a guarding component. And for the dog to, let's say, find a hidden suspect and hold him there at bay, baying, requires this kind of active instinct, this staying excited at a dead prey or still prey, not necessarily dead, but a still prey, trying to stimulate that prey to either flee or to try to provoke a fight with him, or even if he lets him out. Now, the thing about this is the herding breeds had a natural disposition to this instinct from herding sheep, right, to stay excited. Even though they're not biting the sheep, they're excited by the sheep, right? Then they would bite them if they had to get them to move. Same thing with cattle dogs, a little tougher even than sheep dogs because they had to bite them a little harder because they were a little more stubborn. But what they would do is they would spit it out. They would spit when they got the cow or the sheep moving. They spit it out, but they still were excited. So they shared this kind of like terrier-like, continuous high excitement in these activities, in this aggressive model that I'm talking about. And if you dissect French ring sport or PSA or Schutzhund, you'll see in modern dog sport that there's a big necessity for this active, this staying excited throughout the whole program, so that the dog will search the blinds, he'll find the decoy, he'll bark continuously at the decoy, he'll seize the decoy when he tries to escape or attack. When you tell him to out, he lets go, but he's not defeated, he's not calm after he lets out, he stays excited, he's ready to grab again. This is kind of in contrast to the bulldog. The bull breeds, in general, were never really selected for this because they had one prey-oriented, predatory lock on, just get on, lock on, and stay on. They were never really required to let go, to stay excited, to bite again, to let go. They weren't selected for this active disposition because they were just required to get on and stay on. And one of the challenges to this day with training bull breeds in advanced protection sports is to try to keep the excitement up. How do we teach them to let go without being defeated or without being bored or without losing the power and the grip? Because the bull breeds will bite really ferociously, but when you start to try to turn them, like teach them, okay, like let go and then wait a little bit and then bite again and then let go and then bite again, they don't naturally have the same affinity as a herding breed to these behaviors, because the bull breed was originally selected just to get on. He's more of a wrestler. Just get on. It doesn't really matter how you bite as long as you stay on the bite, and basically outmaneuver and wrestle over time the other adversary, be it a dog, a wild boar, a badger, whatever it might be. So here again, you have some very different jobs, some different dispositions, some different forms of aggression. And I caution people on holding any one style above all other styles. We fall into this idea like, I see this a lot with the pit bull, this idea that like gameness is the ultimate. And I respect it for what it is. I've had many phenomenal, incredible, awe-inspiring pit bulls and game-bred dogs in my life. However, I've also seen dogs that were extremely well-bred, that were hard-proven in combat, pit bulls, but at the same time were afraid of the most inane shit. Like, they'd be afraid of like a tile floor or, a garbage can or something like, or a strange environment. They'd have their tail between their legs. Once they saw something that they viewed as a prey, which could even be another animal, another dog even, they were unstoppable. They would fight for hours or until they were dead, or whichever came first. But they did not have the selection process of being so environmentally secure as a police dog has been selected to be, because the police dog has to function in strange and varying environments. So because of that, the police dog really doesn't necessitate as much of a defensive nature or even as much of a socially dominant nature, but more of an offensive, active aggression / prey nature, because he's being told to apprehend and seize fleeing criminals. And that's a particular perimeter of requirement when we talk about a police dog. And the thing that I think that when a lot of people say, oh, that's just a sport dog and it's not good, I think it's not good for real security or it's not good for protection. There's a grain of truth to that, because they're being selected more for their offensive nature and their ability to apprehend regardless of the distractions like loud noises and slippery floors and climbing on a roof, or a criminal crawls under a fence or into a dark area, or strange footings. A police dog is required to go through all those things and still apprehend the criminal. That's what he's required to do. A security dog is required to stay on his own property, to be fierce and to deter people from coming in. These are different jobs. They're not the same job. You can get a dog that will do both of these jobs and maybe even several others. But the more jobs you try to give a dog, the wider range of use you try to apply to a single breed or type of dog, the more difficult it's going to be fundamentally to perfect that or to get high percentages in the bloodline of that, because you're just trying to go in a varied directions. You're trying to go in multiple directions at one time.
You should end with the fight with Raymond.
Well, no, I got something. My wife thinks I'm corny. She thinks I'm corny because I always end out my lives with a poem, right? Because I'm like, I'm an artist, so I just like to do this. So I'm going to do one more. I was thinking about this a little bit earlier today. For some reason, it popped in my head because I'm a big student of nature. And I love God, and I love the natural world, right? And I said one time to myself, I was like, just think, just think. Just think of the greenery enfolding the earth, the abundance of creatures, their death and their birth, the forest, the jungle, the sun and the wind, the birds and the animals, fur, flesh, and fin. Just think of the insects. Just think of the snake. Just think of the frog and the chain that they make. Just think of our planet so teeming with life. Just think of our sequence, our day and our night. A great panorama to stagger the mind. A great panorama of treasures to find. A delicate balance so easy to see. A delicate balance of God's energy which endlessly flows from the sun to the leaves, from the leaves on the trees to the fish and the bees, and the wolf and the bear and the fox and the deer, and the rain in our sky to our rivers so clear. And just think how we humans depend on that web, on the cycle of life, on its flow, on its ebb. Just think. Wow, I lost the last line.
It's still great.
Just think how we humans abuse all God has planted. Just think what we humans have taken for granted. There's the end. I hadn't thought of it in a long time. It's off the top of my head and I'm getting old, guys. I'll see you next week, hopefully. Now I know how to turn off too. When I want to go on live, now I'm not going live, I'm going dead. It's this X right here. There you go.